the historic match between Baduk Grandmaster Lee Se-dol and Google's artificial intelligence AlphaGo comes to an end. Taking center stage now is AI and the future ahead. The countdown begins. With less than 30 days to go to general elections, there's been a flurry of movement on the political front. What are voters looking for? And the threat of cyber warfare. A series of online attacks on South Korea is keeping people on their toes. How big a threat are North Korea's cyber soldiers? These stories and more coming right up. Welcome to News Inside. I'm An Jung-hyun. Our panelists are with us once again. Professor Shin Sang-hyuk, great to have you back. And Dr. Bong Young-sik, good to see you again.
Hi.
Let's get started with our first topic of discussion. All eyes were on the historic man versus machine battle in the game of Go, known as Baduk in Korea, between Grandmaster Lee Se-dol and Google's artificial intelligence AlphaGo. Here's a rundown of the 5 rounds of competition between the two.
The historic battle pitting man against machine kicked off on March 9th. Grandmaster of Baduk, or Go, Lee Se-dol took on the black stones in the first round, while AlphaGo picked up the white. The result took everyone by surprise as Lee was outmaneuvered by the computer program in 186 moves. In the second round, AlphaGo won again with black beating Lee in 211 moves. The third round was no different, with the artificial intelligence system claiming victory with white in 176 moves. The battle had gone from a competition to a challenge for Lee Se-dol. But after 3 sore losses, the Grandmaster reclaimed his glory with white stones as he forced AlphaGo to throw in the towel within 180 moves. Experts say move 78 was one of brilliance.
And so one of the main reasons we came here was to have a really strong player, an amazing player who was able to push AlphaGo into discovering where these holes are. And for us, this is really valuable knowledge. And we're really looking forward to taking this knowledge and using it to learn more about our systems and how they can improve and how we can learn more.
And then came the most fiercest battle in the final round, which lasted for over 6 hours. Riding on his victory from the previous round, Lee Se-dol managed to secure a stronger position in the lower right corner in the early stages. But from the midpoint of the battle, AlphaGo stepped up its attack, eventually securing a win. The historic match of man versus machine ended in a 1-4 defeat.
아직은 해볼 수 있는 수준이 아닌가 이렇게 생각을 하고요. 그런 점에서 좀 아쉽다는 처음에 말씀을 좀 드렸습니다. 좀 의문이 들었습니다. 알파고에 두는 수법들을 보면서 과연 우리가 기존에 알고 있던 것이 정말 맞는가, 다 맞았던가 이런 좀 그런 의문은 들었습니다. 앞으로 조금 더 연구를 해봐야 될 것 같습니다.
Then how does AlphaGo exactly function? In terms of hardware, the system is composed of 1,202 CPUs and 176 GPUs in essence, meaning it's multiple computers combined. With this, it can examine 100,000 different points in a second, compared to 100 that Lee Se-dol would be able to spot. On top of this, it's equipped with a deep learning algorithm, which means it can study on its own, making it one of the best artificial intelligence systems yet to exist. Regardless of the results, this historic battle has pushed AI into the spotlight, and the newly found interest in this field is likely to stay for some time.
So AlphaGo won in the end, but the battle drew intense coverage worldwide, and it was followed closely by even people who don't know how to play the game. Did you watch the match?
Yes, I watched the all matches.
You're a Baduk player yourself,
yes,
right?
I love to play Baduk by myself. And then actually, I thought the Grandmaster Lee could win the match. But unlike my expectation, he lost. But I think, it was really meaningful for all of us because that many of us not familiar with the AI, and so I think the match itself, themselves were very interesting for not me, but the many people in Korea, I think. Well, around the world, actually.
And
yes.
Paduk is becoming more
Popular.
well-known among the younger
I think
generation
so.
as
I
well.
think so.
Were you surprised by the results, Dr. Bong?
I was, because Grandmaster Lee Se-do seems to be brimming with confidence when he was doing interview prior to the beginning of these 5-round matches against the AlphaGo. And I thought the record would have been far closer than what it is, in 1-4 in favor of the machine. So I was really surprised how well the machine AlphaGo did.
Many people saw this as a matter of pride for the human race. Why do you think AlphaGo chose Lee Se-do as its opponent, by the way?
Well, it was ready to have the ultimate test for the quality of artificial intelligence. Paduk or Go is one of the most complicated game that human race ever invented, with a history that goes over 2,500 years. So the AlphaGo, or the artificial intelligence invented for the specific purpose of playing the game, was getting ready to have ultimate tests. So last year it had matches against the European Paduk champion, who was only Idan, the level 2, as opposed to Grandmaster Lee Se-do, who has the ultimate ranks as a Gudan, level 9. So after having a sound defeat of the European champion Fan Wei in 2015, the AlphaGo threw the challenge to Grandmaster Lee Se-do, which he happily accepted. And now we are all so surprised.
Lee Se-do said about his defeat, and I quote him, "This is not a loss for man, but a loss for me."
오늘의 패배는 이세돌이 패배한 거지 인간이 패배한 것은 아니지 않나.
Yes, I think a machine may be able to outperform human intellect, but we humans also have what machines don't, things like intuition or senses.
Yes.
Can a machine really compete against these?
At the moment, I don't think so. The AlphaGo just try play Baduk according to the lessons which he got from the data. So when the Grandmaster Lee used the quite unique and unfamiliar tactic, AlphaGo made a mistake. So I think considering this kind of aspect of AlphaGo, I think at the moment, well, the machine cannot win the match against, the human being, I think.
Still, what we see in science fiction movies doesn't seem too far-fetched anymore. Machines that evolve, that learn by themselves. Any films that come to your mind when we talk about artificial intelligence?
Well, I guess my favorite film in that regard should be The Matrix, the original one. And I really like the scene in which Neo, the chosen one, was asked to choose between the red pill and the blue pill, whether he would choose to stay in the virtual reality without wanting to know the real world. But Neo, the ultimate savior of humankind, chose to swallow the red pill.
What about you?
My favorite film is The Terminator. Well, actually, it tells us so many things. When the artificial intelligence work with the robots or hardware, it could be quite dangerous for human beings, or it could be very useful for the human beings, depending on the purposes of use.
Well, this Go match has people talking about a new era awaiting us not too far off in the future. A recent survey actually shows that 6 in 10 adults here in Korea believe what they do at work can be replaced by robots. Also, there was a fairly even split between those who said they would lose to artificial intelligence if they competed in the workplace and those who weren't sure of the outcome. Only about 14% of the respondents thought they could beat machines. So seeing AlphaGo take home victory has many people wondering if their jobs will be safe in the future. They're saying things like it's only a matter of time before robots start taking over their work. In your opinion, what sort of jobs are likely to disappear and which ones will survive?
I wish my job is not one of the jobs that will be lost to the machines in the future. But it seems like whatever experience we have these days, we are concerned about potential job loss. But I'd like to emphasize that in this world, present and the future, there are some things that cannot be replaced by the machine. Because as you pointed out, that human beings are more than just intelligence, but we have emotions, intuition, and capacity to make difficult decisions based upon values. So watching the very interesting and intense 5 rounds of competition between Grandmaster Lee and the machine AlphaGo, I was reminded of the old movie I saw long time ago. The movie was a THX 1138 made in 1971. It's a film about cyborg and the human beings in the future. And everything is controlled by robotics and artificial intelligence in the setting. But one scene was very interesting because in the scene, the THX, the humans, combined with the robotics, enter into a booth. There is a confessional, like in the Catholic Church. And he wanted to get a sense of relief and forgiveness by the ultimate authority. And the machine popped up and gave him the blessing. So as long as human nature remains the same in search for ultimate meanings in life, human beings are only animals that seek meanings in life and their actions, then there are some things that cannot be replaced simply by machines. And I have a look into the list of jobs that will be increasingly popular for the next 50 years, and the list of jobs that are most likely to disappear in the next 50 years. And of course, the jobs such as software programmers and computer engineers top the list. That's not surprising.
We need them to make the machines.
Right. But to my happiness, jobs such as religious leaders, psychiatrists, politicians, and lawyers, and teachers also were highly ranked on the list as popular jobs in the future. Because human beings are combined with physics, but at the same time emotions. So as long as human beings remain the same in search for meanings, and they attain the desire to protect their souls, then there will be jobs remaining popular in the future, despite the rise of the machines.
So it's unlikely that we'll see a machine pop out of the confessional
Right.
to give its blessing.
Do you happen to know which job will be disappeared faster than the other jobs if the AI became more popular and the more, what can I say, close to us? Do you know which job? The medical doctor. I read an article about it. But according to the newspaper in the UK, I think the doctor will disappear in the near future.
Well, already there are robots that are performing
Yes,
complicated
exactly.
surgeries, right?
Exactly, yes.
So are you looking forward to the future that AI will bring?
Yes, when I was in the UK, I had a chance to see, enjoy seeing the paintings drawn by the computer system. Actually, this is another computerized program made by Google. Actually, I saw the paintings. It was really fascinating, actually. And then well, in every corners of our life, definitely, we will not free from the AI's influences. Well, we can see the medical robots equipped with the AI, and then I saw I had the chance to listen to the songs sung by the AI, and they changed the voices. They imitated the very famous singers. So I think who knows? I mean, I cannot say how big changes they will make in our life.
But imagine myself lying in my sick bed, waiting for the final moment to say goodbye to this world, and I'll be so afraid if it will be decided by the machine whether I should be taken off the oxygen mask or not. So I like to maintain my human touch at the final moment.
But there was a movie that is showing us the love between the AI, robots, and then human beings.
Right.
I can fall in love with the beautiful AI. I think it's
Well, I think the medical field, medical ethics is one area that will probably remain a gray area for a long time when it comes to artificial intelligence, right?
Right.
Well, Korea is also trying to play catch up in the game of artificial intelligence. Here's a look at some of the projects that are being pursued by the government.
With the potential of AI high on the rise, the Korean government has also been looking to further support the industry. The Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy has pledged to increase funding for AI to roughly $16.7 billion and step up investment in talent and technology development.
Many countries are paying close attention to the growth potential and future of AI. What sort of plans do they have?
Well, many countries have their different ways of promoting the research and production of artificial intelligence. For instance, Japan and China have been pouring a great deal of government revenues in developing robotics, mainly engaged in the assembly industries. Whereas the United States model is far more based upon the initiatives of private sector, such as IBM, Google. For instance, IBM invented a program called Watson. Basically, the AI seems to be able to answer any questions for the customers. And so it's a combination of pursuit of better applications and solutions and the pursuit of more reliable and diverse platforms and products on the other hand. And there are a lot of areas in which the investment and promotion have been made, such as virtual reality industries, the invention and development of driverless cars, and the drones as well. And China seems to be very much determined to push ahead this program. Recent National People's Congress actually ranked government support for the brain science and intelligence research as a fourth major agendas that the Chinese government is going to pursue as a part of its 13th five-year economic developmental plan out of 100 agendas. So development of artificial intelligence ranked really high on the agenda of the Xi Jinping government. And South Korean government, having watched the defeat of Grandmaster Lee Sedol to the AlphaGo, trying to keep up with other countries in this regard.
Well, AI is one of the key elements in the fourth industrial revolution, as discussed at the World Economic Forum in Davos earlier this year. The AlphaGo battle, in some ways, may be the start of the new era. What kind of changes do you foresee in our industrial environment?
I think already we have seen some changes in the industrial sector. I mean, owing to the AI, I mean, automation of the car assembly line, and as we discussed before, we use the medical robots to treat to cure the patients, and then particularly I think even in the very high tech the industries. I think the ratio of the automation is quite high, relatively higher than the other sectors of industries. So I think these kinds of trends will go on, and eventually, when I visit to Germany, I think even control rooms operated by the artificial intelligence. I was very surprised to see that. And then not human being, the robots, I mean AIs, control the all production procedures. I think that can be one phase of the future we will have in the near future. Korea will, I think, have those kind of system in the near future. So I think maybe we can operate a very big factory without hiring only one human being.
Be interesting to see what the future holds for us. In the meantime, let's turn our attention to local politics. Ahead of the April 13th general elections, competition for party nominations is heating up. Let's take a look at where things stand. So election day is drawing near, but things are far from being settled. What do you make of the general mood surrounding the election this year?
Well, it is very challenging because personally, I do not really know much about the candidates running for the seat in my own district. But we are only almost less than a month away from the election day. So South Korean voters are in a very difficult position to choose the candidate that they do not have enough information about.
Let alone get familiarized with their policies.
Right, but it will be very difficult for the voters to get enough knowledge about the candidates and make a reasonable comparison among the candidates.
What do you make of the general atmosphere?
Well, before main event, still we have about 1 month left. but many people pay attention to the news about the politics, particularly to get a nomination. Many politicians make every effort, but I think people have a quite negative impression, not the good impression from the situation happening right now. I think that is not very good for the future of the Korean economics and Korean politics. I mean, let the people have the interest about the politics. I think that could be the first step to have a very high quality politics, but I doubt whether we get on the right track or not.
Well, in the 2012 general elections, I remember youth-related issues figured prominently. Issues like the costly college tuition, as well as a high unemployment rate. What's topping the agenda this time?
Well, I think the government rendering support for youth employment and education made affordable will be still on the agenda, but I don't think there will be the deal breaker in this general election for several reasons. One, there is not much difference between the election platforms proposed by both ruling parties and the opposition parties. So either way, the youth voters will see almost a similar set of benefits coming from the elections once the election is over. And it is true that both opposition parties and ruling parties need to capture the young voters because the youth unemployment is in a serious condition. We just recorded the worst youth unemployment rate at 12.5%, which is 1% higher than this time last year. So it is necessary for both parties to talk about helping young people finding their jobs. For instance, the opposition, the Democratic Party promised to support the unemployment young population by providing 6-month-long subsidies for these people until they find their jobs, by providing about $600 a month for 6 months. And the ruling party also proposed a similar supporting system as an election platform. But at the end of the day, it'll be the administrative branch of the government who will come up with the plausible and practical measures to help youth unemployment. So I don't think talking about youth unemployment will be such a big deal breaker between the two parties in this general election. What is very important for the victory of these parties in this election is capturing the senior voters. Senior voters at 60s or older, because they constitute the biggest voting blocks across the generations. For the first time in history of Korean politics.
And the block is only going to get bigger.
Right, going to get bigger. Now it is about 9.7 million votes, if you count the voters in 60s and older. So the average age of the Korean voters has increased from 32.3 years old in 2002 presidential election to 46 years old currently. Now the voters in the 60s is bigger than voters in their 40s. So you can talk about helping young voters as much as you want, but at the end of the day, if you do not capture the senior voters, you cannot win the election.
If I add one thing more, actually, as Dr. Bong pointed out, both ruling parties and political opposition parties, they have talked so many things. We are going to do this. But the point, actually, they do not have any concrete strategies to fund.
All the programs that they're promising, right?
Yes. I think the money is not everything, but something. Particularly, money is very important to implement policies. But I never ever heard about or find any explanation about how they get the fund. So I think those kind of things made us not to believe them. You know, that is very interesting as well as very curious or very sad point which I want to make.
So I guess the underlying theme here that is going to attract voters on election day is going to be the economy, whether it's for the youth or the senior group.
I think so, because these days, not all, but many people are really worried about the future economy. When you look at the major economic indexes, definitely over the last 2 years, we can easily say the Korean economy has been worsened. And considering external and internal economic situations facing Korean economy, definitely we cannot say that the future of the Korean economy is bright. So next question, as Dr. Bong pointed out, then what kind of the measures government should take in order to take care of the people or in order to overcome the economic difficulties facing us. But I think, unfortunately, I cannot see any trustful the suggestions or ideas coming from the political parties.
Which is why there's been criticism that these candidates are resorting to populism.
Right,
with
and
their campaign
which
pledges.
also exacerbate the already existing disappointment and apathy for politics and politicians.
Well, I guess as of now, we can only hope that lawmakers will follow through with their promises once they're elected. Moving on to our final topic of discussion, the National Intelligence Service has announced that North Korea recently hacked the smartphones of dozens of key officials from the government's foreign affairs and national security offices. There have also been reports that Pyongyang has carried out more than 30,000 cyber attacks on the Seoul government so far, possibly indicating just how advanced the cyber warfare capabilities may be.
Looking back on North Korea's past cyber attacks, it crippled the website of major government agencies, financial institutions, and broadcasters' networks. In 2014, it even extended its reach to extract data from nuclear power plants. Not only that, according to records from the National Intelligence Service, in the recent month, the number of cyber terror attempts have doubled. There have been some moves against financial institutions, Korea's railway operators, while dozens of smartphones owned by high-level officials in the foreign affairs and security front are said to have been penetrated.
So are we to believe that North Korea is behind the recent smartphone hacking incident?
It's very probable, judging from how formidable the cyber attack capability North Korea actually possesses. Even the United States CIA ranked North Korea number 4 in the entire world for its cyber attack capability, and North Korea maintains at least 6,800 highly trained cyber attack agents, mostly hiding in China. And it also has a Bureau 21 in charge of cyber attack toward South Korea. And there was numerous cases in which North Korea was caught red hand for cyber attack on major government agencies and banks, NH Bank, and news agency such as 중앙일보 for the last 10 years. For instance, in June 2013, the website of the Blue House was covered with all these North Korean propagandas praising the glory of North Korea and its leader. So South Korean system seems to be quite vulnerable to North Korean cyber attack.
Well, one of the difficulties in dealing with cyber attacks is that it's often hard to pinpoint the origins, leading many to question whether Pyongyang is truly behind these events. Well, here are some testimonies regarding North Korea's cyber warfare capabilities. So the recent series of cyber attacks is probably in retaliation for the sanctions that were imposed on North Korea. I mean, it has happened before, although Pyongyang would never admit it. Why choose cyber attacks, though, as the means of aggression?
It is the most affordable and effective retaliatory measures North Korea possesses. Think about it. North Korea has enormous advantages in terms of strategic asymmetry with regard to cyber attack. South Korea is simply far target richer than North Korea because of its highly sophisticated and complicated financial system and population depending upon internet and telecommunication. If South Korea is going to wage a cyber attack to North Korea, how many
North Koreans
targets,
will
right?
suffer,
How many effective targets the South Korean government can, find. So it is only natural and understandable of North Korean government to focus on cyber attack by taking advantage of this disproportionate strategic upper hand with regard to the affordable targets inside South Korea. And it seems like North Korea has already implanted numerous malwares. So it is just a matter of time when and where, by North Korea's own choosing, this malware is going to destroy very important infrastructure in South Korean government and financial system in near future. According to my own conversation with some North Korean defectors who were privy to North Korea's cyber attack to South Korea, then North Korean cyber agencies used to brag that South Korean anti-cyber attack system was so vulnerable that if we can just penetrate Anlab and Haori, then we can easily destroy at least 80% of the entire South Korean government and financial system.
Well, in light of the Anti-Terrorism Act that was recently passed into law, there are now growing calls for a quick passage of the anti-cyber terrorism bill as well. But once again, we are faced with a debate over national security versus privacy.
I think that's not a question to answer in a black and white argument. But if you ask me in that way, I will put more priorities on the national security. Because that without country, we cannot talk about the privacy. Then, of course, because of the past, the history, some people are very worried about the intervention of the national intelligence services in a private life or in the democracy of the country. But anyway, I think when you look at the anti-cyber terror bill itself, of course, I think there are some safety net to prevent the excessive intervention of the national intelligence agencies in the private life. If there are some concerns about those kind of things, then we can discuss about how to prevent that agency from intervening or destroying the private life. But I think it's very regret to say that the politicians say that discuss about this issue in a black and white argument way. I think this is not good. So I strongly recommend that we have to look at the same issue from various perspectives. To find a solution of some issue, I think we have to go into the pocket of the others. Otherwise, we cannot find the solutions. But I think our politicians should take this kind of approaches to find a solution of various issues. I think this bill is one of the issues which should be solved by politicians in that way.
Well, balancing protection of civic liberty and privacy and promoting national security from external threat is not just a problem only for South Korea, for all the other countries, including the United States. As recently illustrated by the tug of war between the White House pressuring Apple to give out the encryption to open the terrorist cell phones to find the intelligence and information about the recent attack, and Apple resisting the pressure from the government in the name of protecting the customers' privacy. And the Snowden case, who defected to Russia after revealing secret information that CIA has been tapping numerous cell phones, including cell phones belong to leaders of United States close security partners. So it is a perennial dilemma for any political authority to have a right balance between the civic liberty and national security. So we have to maintain the dual aspects of the national security. National security does not only regard physical protection of your asset and life against the external threat, but also it is our capacity to maintain the kind of life that we wish to have as a citizens of democracy and a country which has a due respect for human rights.
So what sort of issues need to be reviewed and resolved now for us to better deal with cyber terrorism?
Well, I think the key issue regarding the cyber terror bill was that to secure the privacy, the individual rights. If those things are needed, why not? We can edit up those kind of things in the bill. Then I think the maturity of this bill can be improved a lot.
Right. Another point of consideration for potential improvement or revision of the bill is to keep pace with the global trend. Whenever there is a high-ranked summit meetings between the two governments of China and the United States, there are always three main agendas to be discussed. One is South China Sea, second is global warming, and third one is cybersecurity. So by looking at and learn from the agreement and consensus between these two big powers in global politics, South Korea can optimize its domestic bills in countering cyber attack from North Korea with the global norms and trends. And it is one testimony by the North Korean defector saying that the North Korean government has recently shifted the government resources in implanting the secret agents in order to engage in subversion and instability in the Korean society, which turned out to be simply too difficult and very costly. So rather than implanting secret agents, it makes better sense for North Korea to implant malwares to promote instability and disorder in the Korean society. And by keeping the agents of cyber attack outside North Korea, but mostly inside the territory of China, North Korea can maintain the plausible deniability by sidestepping the territorial jurisdiction. So South Korean government cannot really hunt down the North Korean cyber attack agents because they are hiding inside Chinese territory. So it'll be a sovereignty problem potentially going to happen between South Korea and China.
While we're on the subject of North Korea, just a few days ago, President Park Geun-hye emphasized the importance of human rights when we're talking about North Korea. And we saw that passage of a landmark bill earlier this month. What's being done in that regard?
Well, it's now passed at the National Assembly 11 years after it was proposed the first time, which is a significant delay compared to the case of Japan that passed the North Korean Human Rights Bill in 2008 and the United States in 2004. So pressuring North Korea on this human rights violation is one of the many efforts by South Korea to apply universal standards and principles to lead the fundamental transform of the North Korean system. And we have to see one very important aspect of the North Korean Human Rights Bill is the North Korean Human Rights Violation Archive. It is the measure that is going to keep on pressuring the North Korean agents who have been directly and personally engaged in gross violation, including massive killings of innocent North Korean citizens. By knowing that their behaviors will have been kept in record so that they will be tried in international court, will pose a very significant effective psychological pressure on these North Korean agents. That might help North Korean authority to tame its behavior in wanton violation of basic human rights for its people.
Well, we have to wrap up. So any final words you'd like to share with us before we go?
Oh, well, actually, I'm very curious about the future life under the influence of the AI. So I think we have to prepare for the future life based on the very thorough study about the AI.
Dr. Bong?
I'd like to mention the athlete named Roger Bannister and the 4-minute mile as the name of the competition. We used to believe that with the human capacity, that there's no way that the human can break the 4-minute mark to run 1 mile. And it was the Roger Bannister who broke the record by finishing 1 mile in 3 minutes 59 seconds in 1954. I like to remind ourselves that it is hopeful that we human beings can continue to progress after this shocking event with AlphaGo beating the Grandmaster Mr. Lee, because human progression is only possible when there's a challenge.
I I can see that the topic of AI has left quite an impression on our panelists here. Thank you very much once again for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you. And that is all for this edition of News Inside. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with more next week.